The rain didn't just fall. It hammered against the reinforced glass of the Blackwood estate like 1,000 angry fists demanding entry. Inside, the silence was even more terrifying. Sarah sat on the edge of a velvet armchair that likely cost more than her father's entire house. She kept her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles turning white, trying to stop them from trembling. She was 24, a qualified nurse, and a woman who prided herself on her composure in emergency rooms. But this was different. This wasn't a medical emergency. This was an execution. Beside her, her father, Mr. Williams, wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief that was already soaked. He looked small in this room, a room with ceilings as high as a cathedral and shadows that seemed to swallow the light. "He's coming," her father whispered, his voice cracking. "Sarah, please. Remember what I told you. Don't look him in the eye too long. Don't speak unless spoken to. Damian Blackwood isn't a man you negotiate with. He's a man you survive." Sarah swallowed hard, the lump in her throat tasting like bile. "Dad, how much do we actually owe him? You said it was bad, but you never gave me a number." Her father flinched. He looked at the heavy mahogany double doors at the end of the long library. 50 million, he breathed out, the number hanging in the cold air like a curse. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. 50 million? Dad, how? How could you? Click. The sound was sharp, mechanical, and instantly silenced them both. The double doors didn't swing open. They slid apart with a hydraulic hiss. And then he entered. Damian Blackwood, the billionaire recluse. The man who had once been the king of the city's business underworld until a tragic car accident 2 years ago supposedly left him broken. He rolled into the room in a wheelchair that looked less like a medical device and more like a throne made of chrome and black leather. He moved with the silence of a predator. Sarah's breath hitched. The tabloids made him look monstrous, disheveled, and broken. The man in front of her was none of those things. He was terrifyingly beautiful. He was wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. His skin was a rich, deep ebony, glowing under the dim chandelier light. His hair was styled in thick, neat dreadlocks that were tied back, revealing a face carved from granite, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes that were blacker than the storm outside. Even sitting down, his presence filled the room. He looked powerful, dangerous. He stopped the chair 10 feet away from them. He didn't smile. He didn't greet them. He simply stared, his gaze sweeping over Sarah's father with contempt before locking onto her. Sarah felt a shiver race down her spine. He looked at her not like a person, but like an item on a shelf he was considering buying. He took in her modest blue dress, her curves, the long braids framing her face. "Mr. Williams," Damian said. His voice was deep, a baritone rumble that vibrated in Sarah's chest. It was cold, devoid of any warmth. "You are late." The rain, sir," her father stammered, standing up clumsily. "The roads were flooded. We came as fast as we could." "Excuses are for the poor," Damian said smoothly. He tapped a finger against the armrest of his chair. "You are poor, Mr. Williams. So I suppose I should expect them." Sarah bristled. She hated him instantly. She hated his arrogance, his wealth, and the way he made her father look like a frightened child. "We didn't come here to be insulted," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly but loud enough to cut through the tension. Her father gasped. "Sarah, quiet." Damian's eyes snapped to hers. For a second, a flicker of surprise passed through his dark gaze, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He rolled his chair forward, inching closer to her. The mechanical whir of the wheels was the only sound in the room. "You have spirit," Damian murmured, studying her face. "Your father has the backbone of a jellyfish, but you are different." "I'm a nurse," Sarah said, lifting her chin. "I deal with difficult patients every day. I know how to handle bad tempers." Damian's lips curled into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Is that what you think I am? A patient?" "I see a wheelchair," Sarah said, gesturing to it. "And I see a man who uses his pain to bully others." "Sarah." Her father looked like he was about to faint. Damian laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Pain, he repeated, tasting the word. You know nothing of my pain, little nurse. If you did, you wouldn't be standing there so bravely. He turned his attention back to her father. The amusement vanished instantly. 50 million. Today is the deadline. Do you have my money, Williams? I need more time, her father pleaded, wringing his hands. Just 6 months. Please, Damian. I've liquidated the assets. I've sold the cars. I just need. You have nothing, Damian interrupted brutally. Your company is bankrupt. Your assets are frozen. You are a sinking ship, and you owe me a fortune. Damian pressed a button on his armrest, and a tablet screen mounted to the chair lit up. He swiped a finger across it, seemingly bored. I could have you arrested tonight. Fraud, embezzlement. The list is long. You would die in prison. Her father dropped to his knees. Actually dropped to his knees on the Persian rug. Sarah felt a tear hot with humiliation prick her eye. Please, he sobbed. Take the house. Take anything. Don't send me to jail. I don't want your house, Damian sneered. I have 10 of them. He rolled closer, until he was right in front of the kneeling man. Then he looked up at Sarah. The intensity of his stare made her want to run. However, Damian said softly, there is one asset you possess that interests me. Sarah froze. The air in the room seemed to vanish. What? Her father asked, looking up with tear-filled eyes. Damian pointed a long, manicured finger at Sarah. Her. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Me, Sarah whispered. My public image needs softening, Damian said, sounding like he was discussing a business merger rather than a human life. My board of directors thinks I am too isolated, too volatile since the accident. They want to see stability. They want to see a family man. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his fingers. I need a wife. A wife who is a nurse is even better. It sells the story perfectly. The devoted woman caring for the crippled billionaire. The press will eat it up. You want me to work for you? Sarah asked, confused. I want you to marry me, Damian corrected. A contract marriage. 1 year. You play the part of the loving wife. You live here. You attend galas with me. You smile for the cameras. In exchange, your father's debt is wiped clean. No, Sarah said immediately. I'm not for sale. Damian raised an eyebrow. Then your father goes to prison tonight. He reached for a phone on the small table beside him. Wait. Mr. Williams scrambled up, grabbing Sarah's arm. Sarah, please. It's just a year. Just 1 year. He's rich. You'll be taken care of. Please, baby, don't let them take me. Sarah looked at her father, a broken, desperate man. Then she looked at Damian. He was watching her with a calm, predatory patience. He knew he had won. He knew she couldn't let her father rot in a cell. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. If I do this, Sarah said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. I have conditions. Damian paused, his hand hovering over the phone. Conditions. He looked amused. You are in no position to make demands, Sarah. But humor me. I won't sleep in your bed, she said firmly. And I continue my work at the hospital. I won't be a prisoner in this house. Damian's eyes narrowed slightly. He studied her for a long, agonizing moment. Agreed, he said finally. You will have your own suite. And you can keep your little job, provided it doesn't interfere with your duties as Mrs. Blackwood. But let me be clear. His voice dropped an octave, becoming a dangerous growl. He rolled the chair forward until his knees brushed against her legs. Sarah instinctively wanted to step back, but she held her ground. You belong to me now, Damian whispered. For 1 year you are mine. You do not look at other men. You do not speak to the press without my permission. And you never, ever go into the west wing of this house. Do you understand? Why? Sarah asked, her nurse's curiosity piqued despite her fear. What's in the west wing? My business, Damian snapped. And if you value your safety, you will stay out of it. He held out a hand. A large, calloused hand. Do we have a deal? Sarah looked at his hand. Then she looked at her father, who was nodding frantically. She felt a piece of her soul wither away. Deal, she whispered. She took his hand. His grip was firm, his skin warm. But as she shook it, she felt something strange. His forearm muscles, the flexors, rippled under his suit jacket with a tension that didn't match his relaxed posture. As a nurse, she knew anatomy. She knew how bodies moved. When someone sat in a wheelchair for 2 years, their core and leg muscles atrophied. Their balance shifted. But when Damian pulled his hand back, he didn't just use his arm. He shifted his weight in the chair. It was subtle, a micro-movement of his hips. He engaged his core to stabilize himself. That's odd, Sarah thought. A paraplegic shouldn't have that kind of core control. She pushed the thought away. He was a billionaire. Maybe he had the best physiotherapists in the world. Maybe he used electric stimulation. She had bigger problems to worry about. She had just sold her life to the devil. 2 days later, the Blackwood estate was even more intimidating at night. Sarah stood in the center of her new bedroom. It was luxurious, certainly. The bed was big enough for 5 people, the carpets were made of silk, and the balcony overlooked a sprawling garden maze. But the door had a heavy lock, and the windows were reinforced. It was a gilded cage. They had been married that morning at the courthouse. No guests, no flowers, just a signature on a piece of paper and a cold handshake. She had spent the day unpacking, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. Now it was past midnight. The house was silent. She was thirsty. Her throat felt like sandpaper. She opened her bedroom door and peered into the hallway. The lights were dimmed to a low amber glow. She knew the kitchen was on the ground floor, past the grand staircase. Sarah walked softly, her bare feet making no sound on the plush runner. As she passed the corridor leading to the west wing, the forbidden area, she paused. There was a sound. Thud. Hiss. Thud. Hiss. It sounded rhythmic. Like a machine. Or exercise? She frowned. Damian's room was in that wing. But it was 2 a.m. Why would he be awake? And what was that sound? Curiosity, her fatal flaw, took over. She took a step toward the west wing. Then another. The sound got louder. It sounded like heavy breathing. The strain of physical exertion. Is he in trouble? Her nurse instincts kicked in. What if he fell out of his chair? What if he's having a medical emergency? Damian? She whispered, creeping closer to the double doors at the end of the hall. They were slightly ajar, a sliver of bright, clinical light spilling out onto the floor. She reached the door and peered through the crack. Her breath caught in her throat. Her heart stopped. The room inside was a fully equipped gym. But not a rehabilitation gym. It was a soldier's gym. Heavy bags, free weights, pull-up bars. And there was Damian. He wasn't in his wheelchair. The chair sat empty in the corner, looking mocking and useless. Damian was hanging from a pull-up bar, his back to her. He was shirtless. His back was a map of sculpted muscle, sweat glistening on his dark skin as he pulled himself up with terrifying ease. 1, 2, 3. But that wasn't what made Sarah clamp her hand over her mouth to scream. He dropped from the bar. He landed on his feet. He didn't stumble. He didn't collapse. He landed with the grace of a cat, his legs, thick, muscular, powerful legs, absorbing the impact perfectly. He stood up to his full height, well over 6 feet, and rolled his neck. He walked, over to a bench and picked up a towel, wiping his face. Sarah's mind couldn't process it. He's crippled. He's paralyzed. The medical reports, the news, everything said he couldn't walk. He's lying. The realization hit her like a physical blow. He is faking it. All of it. Why? Why would a man this powerful pretend to be broken? She took a step back, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She needed to leave. She needed to go back to her room and pretend she never saw this. But in her panic, her foot caught on the edge of the hallway runner. Scuff. It was a tiny sound, barely a whisper. But inside the gym, Damian froze. He went completely still, like a tiger sensing prey in the tall grass. Sarah stopped breathing. Please don't turn around. Please don't turn around. Slowly, terrifyingly, Damian turned his head toward the door. He didn't look like the invalid husband she had married that morning. He looked like a killer. "Who is there?" His voice wasn't the calm baritone from the meeting. It was sharp, lethal. Sarah didn't answer. She turned and ran. She bolted down the hallway, her feet flying over the carpet. She heard the gym door slam open behind her. She heard the heavy, rapid thud of footsteps, running footsteps, chasing her. He was coming for her. And he wasn't rolling. He was running. She reached her room, threw herself inside, and slammed the door, locking it with trembling fingers. She backed away, sliding down the wood, gasping for air. Bang! A fist hammered against the door. It was heavy, high up, at standing height. "Sarah," Damian's voice came through the wood, low and terrifyingly calm. "Open the door." She squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. She knew the truth now. And she knew that in a house full of secrets, the truth was the most dangerous thing of all. She was married to a stranger who could walk, a stranger who had been lying to the world for 2 years. And now he knew she knew. The silence that followed the pounding was worse than the noise. Sarah pressed her back against the heavy oak door, her chest heaving so hard it hurt. She squeezed her eyes shut, listening. Is he gone? Did he leave? She heard the sound of metal sliding against metal. A key. Her blood turned to ice. Of course. It was his house. He had the master key. No, she whispered, scrambling away from the door, backing into the center of the room until her legs hit the edge of the bed. The lock clicked. The handle turned slowly, deliberately. The door swung open. Sarah braced herself to see the wheelchair. To see him rolling in, pretending, maybe claiming he had heard a noise and came to check on her. But the doorway was empty at waist height. She slowly lifted her eyes. Damian Blackwood stood in the frame. He filled it. Without the chair, he was massive, well over 6'3", with broad shoulders that blocked out the hallway light. He was still shirtless, his chest heaving slightly from the sprint, sweat glistening on his dark skin like oil. His dreadlocks hung loose around his face, giving him a wild, feral look. He wasn't the crippled billionaire anymore. He was a wall of muscle and rage. He stepped into the room. Step. Step. Solid, heavy footsteps. He closed the door behind him and locked it again. Get away from me, Sarah stammered, grabbing a heavy brass lamp from the bedside table. She held it up like a weapon, though her hands were shaking so badly the shade rattled. Stay back. Damian didn't even look at the lamp. He looked at her. His eyes were dark voids, unreadable and terrifying. Put that down, Sarah, he said. His voice was different when he was standing. It projected more, vibrating with a dominance that commanded the air around him. You can walk, she accused, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. You're a liar. You've been lying to everyone. He moved. He covered the distance between them in 2 long strides. Before she could even swing the lamp, his hand shot out and wrapped around her wrist. He didn't hurt her, but his grip was iron. He easily forced her arm down and took the lamp from her, setting it back on the table with a soft clink. Then he crowded her. He stepped so close that she had to tilt her head back to look at him. The heat radiating from his body was intense. He smelled of expensive sandalwood soap and raw, masculine sweat. Yes, he said, his voice a low rumble just above a whisper. I can walk. I can run. I can fight. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. She could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. And now that you know, he continued, you have become the most dangerous liability in my life. Why? Sarah breathed, trapped between his massive body and the bed. Why pretend? The whole world pities you. Pity. Damian spat the word like poison. Pity is a shield, Sarah. When people pity you, they underestimate you. They turn their backs on you. They talk freely in front of you because they think you are broken. He released her wrist but didn't step back. He placed one hand on the bedpost behind her, effectively caging her in. 2 years ago, someone cut the brake lines on my car, he said, his expression hardening. It wasn't an accident. It was an assassination attempt. I survived barely. My legs were crushed. It took me 18 months of agony, surgeries, therapy, pain you cannot imagine, to stand again. Sarah stared at him, her fear momentarily replaced by shock. As a nurse, she knew the grit required for that kind of recovery. But I didn't tell anyone I healed, he said softly, because the person who tried to kill me is still out there. They are waiting for me to be strong again so they can finish the job. As long as I am the cripple, I am safe. I am watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look him in the eye. His fingers were rough, calloused. You have stumbled into a war, Sarah. If the wrong people find out I can walk, they will come for me. And if they know you know, they will kill you to get to me. Sarah trembled. The reality of his words settled over her like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just fraud, this was life and death. I won't tell anyone, she whispered, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. I just want to go home. Please let me go. Damian laughed, a dark, humorless sound. Go home. To what? Your father is bankrupt. If you leave, the deal is void. I will call the police, and he will be in handcuffs by sunrise. He let go of her chin and straightened up, towering over her again. You are staying right here. You are my wife. And now you are my accomplice. He turned and walked toward the door. The sight of his back, the ripple of his muscles as he moved, was mesmerizing and terrifying. He moved with such power. He stopped at the door and looked back over his shoulder. Go to sleep, Mrs. Blackwood. Breakfast is at 8 a.m. sharp. And remember, his eyes narrowed. Downstairs, I am a cripple. If you so much as look at my legs the wrong way in front of the staff, you will regret it. He unlocked the door and vanished into the dark hallway. Sarah sank onto the bed, her legs giving way. She stared at the closed door for hours, afraid to blink. The next morning, sunlight flooded the dining room, mocking Sarah's exhaustion. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Damian standing up, towering over her. She walked into the dining room wearing her nursing scrubs. She had a shift at the hospital at 10 a.m. It was her only escape. Damian was already there. He sat at the head of the long mahogany table, in the wheelchair. He was dressed in a light gray suit, looking impeccable. A blanket was draped over his lap, concealing his legs. He was reading a newspaper, a cup of black coffee steaming beside him. The transformation was terrifyingly perfect. His posture was slightly slumped, his shoulders rounded just enough to suggest weakness. He looked diminished. Good morning, darling, Damian said without looking up from the paper. His voice was the lighter, smoother baritone he used for the public. Sarah froze in the doorway. A maid was pouring juice at the sideboard. Good morning, Sarah mumbled, pulling out a chair at the far end of the table, as far away from him as possible. Come sit closer, Damian commanded softly. He patted the chair to his right. A wife should sit by her husband. Sarah hesitated. She looked at the maid, who was watching them with a polite smile. She had to play the part. She walked over and sat next to him. She could smell the same sandalwood soap from the night before. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Did you sleep well? He asked, finally folding the newspaper and turning to look at her. His eyes dared her to speak. Challenge me, they said. Not really, Sarah said, reaching for the coffee pot. Her hand shook, and the china clattered. I had a nightmare. A monster got into my room. Damian's lips curled into a smirk. Is that so? Perhaps you should lock your door. I did, she shot back, looking at him. It didn't stop him. The maid approached with a platter of fruit. Madam, would you like papaya? Yes, thank you, Sarah said, looking away from Damian's intense gaze. Martha, Damian said to the maid. Leave us. Yes, sir. The maid bobbed a curtsy and hurried out, closing the double doors. The moment the latch clicked, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Damian sat up straighter. The slump vanished. You are playing a dangerous game with your tone, Sarah, he said, picking up his coffee. I'm going to work, she said, standing up. She couldn't eat. She felt sick. I have a shift. Sit down, he ordered. He didn't raise his voice, but the command whipped through the air like a lash. Sarah sat. We have a guest coming at 9 a.m., Damian said calmly. Chief Obi. He is a business associate. He is also a vulture who has been trying to buy my company for pennies since my accident. I don't care about your business, Sarah said. You will care, Damian said, because you're going to stay and greet him with me. You're going to play the doting wife. You will stand behind my chair. You will look at me with adoration. And if he insults me, which he will, you will defend me. Why should I defend you? Sarah asked bitterly. You can defend yourself. You can literally stand up and punch him. Damian leaned in close, his voice dropping. Because if I stand up and punch him, 5 years of planning goes down the drain. You are my cover, Sarah. You make me look human, vulnerable. A man with a pretty wife isn't a threat, he's distracted. Before Sarah could argue, the intercom buzzed. Sir, the butler's voice came through. Chief Obi is here. Damian's face changed instantly. The sharpness in his eyes dulled. His shoulders slumped. He even let his mouth hang slightly open, looking tired and medicated. It was a masterclass in acting. Showtime, he whispered to Sarah. Remember your father. Chief Obi was a short, rotund man with a loud laugh and eyes that moved too fast. He strode into the drawing room wearing a flowing traditional agbada, followed by 2 bodyguards. Damian, my boy, Obi boomed, walking over. He didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he patted Damian on the shoulder, a condescending gesture, like petting a dog. You look pale. Are you eating enough? Sarah stood behind Damian's wheelchair, her hands gripping the handles tight enough to turn her knuckles white. She hated Damian, but she found herself instantly disliking this man too. I am fine, Chief, Damian said, his voice weak and raspy. Just tired. The pain comes and goes. A shame, Obi sked. He sat down on the sofa opposite them, spreading his legs wide. I heard you got married. Is this the lucky lady? Obi's eyes raked over Sarah. It wasn't the appreciative look Damian had given her. It was sleazy. This is Sarah, Damian said. My wife. Nurse, actually, Obi laughed. Smart move, Damian. Marrying your caretaker. Saves on the medical bills, eh? Sarah bristled. She felt Damian tense in the chair beneath her hands. Not a visible tension, but a vibration she could feel through the metal frame. He wanted to kill this man. She is not my caretaker, Damian said softly. She is my partner. Of course. Obi waved his hand dismissively. Now on to business. The merger. My offer stands, Damian. But the price has gone down. The market is volatile. A man in your condition can't be expected to run an empire. Let me take the burden off you. I am not selling, Damian said. Don't be stubborn, Obi sneered, his jovial mask slipping. You're a cripple, Damian. A half-man. You sit in this big house while the wolves circle. I am trying to save you. He leaned forward, looking directly at Sarah. Tell him, my dear. Tell him to take the money so you two can go live on an island somewhere. He can't give you children, he can't give you a real life. Why delay the inevitable? The insult hung in the air. He can't give you children. Sarah looked at the back of Damian's head. She knew the truth. She knew he was a whole man. She knew he could snap Chief Obi in half like a twig. But he sat there, taking the abuse, swallowing his pride for some greater game she didn't understand. Something in her snapped. Maybe it was her nurse's instinct to protect the patient, even a fake one. Or maybe she just hated bullies. Sarah stepped out from behind the wheelchair. She walked around and stood between Damian and Chief Obi. Get out, she said. Obi blinked. Excuse me? I said get out, Sarah said, her voice steady. My husband is tired. You are insulting him in his own home. That is not business. That is disrespect. Sarah, Damian warned, playing the role of the worried husband. No, Damian. She turned to look at him, then looked back at Obi. Chief Obi, you think because his legs don't work, his mind is broken? He built this company. He is 10 times the man you are. She crossed her arms. The offer is rejected. Leave before I call security. Chief Obi stood up, his face purple with rage. He looked at Damian. You let your woman speak for you now? Pathetic. He spat on the floor, on the expensive rug, and turned to his guards. "Let's go." As the door slammed shut behind them, the silence returned. Sarah stood there, breathing hard. Her adrenaline was spiking. She turned to look at Damian. He was staring at her. But the weak look was gone. He was sitting up straight, and his eyes were blazing with something intense. Not anger. Respect. "You have a sharp tongue," Damian murmured. "He was awful," Sarah said, smoothing her scrubs. "I hate men like that." "He is a fool," Damian said. "But he is a dangerous fool." He rolled his chair over to her. He reached out and took her hand. Sarah tried to pull away, but he held on. "Thank you," he said. And for the first time, it sounded genuine. "I didn't do it for you," Sarah lied. "I did it because he annoyed me." Damian smirked. He pulled her hand, drawing her a step closer. His thumb traced the back of her knuckles. "You have a shift at the hospital?" he asked. "Yes. In 20 minutes. "Go," he said. "My driver is waiting." "But Sarah." He squeezed her hand. "Come back straight after. Tonight, we start your training." "Training?" Sarah asked, wary. "If you are going to be the wife of Damian Blackwood," he said, "you need to know more than just how to change a bandage. You need to know how to lie." Sarah spent her shift at the hospital in a daze. Changing IVs, checking charts, all while her mind was back in that mansion. She felt like a double agent. When she returned to the estate that evening, the house was quiet. "The master is in his study," the butler told her. "He requested your presence immediately." Sarah walked to the study. She knocked. "Enter." She walked in. Damian was behind his desk, still in the wheelchair. But the desk was covered in blueprints and files. "Lock the door," he said without looking up. She did. "Come here," he commanded. Sarah walked around the desk. "I have a problem," Damian said. He spun the chair around to face her. "My legs. What about them?" Sarah asked. "They work fine." "That is the problem," he said. "I have been paralyzed for 2 years. But because I have been secretly training, my muscles are defined. My calves are hard. My quads are thick." He gestured to his legs under the trousers. "I have a medical examination next week. Insurance requirements for the company. The doctor is on my payroll, but the nurse is new. If she touches my legs and feels muscle instead of atrophy, the game is up." He looked at Sarah. His gaze was dark, challenging. "I need you to fix it." "Fix what?" Sarah asked. "I can't make your muscles disappear." "No," Damian said. "But you can tell me how to fake the symptoms. You are a nurse. You know what a paralyzed limb feels like. You know how it reacts or doesn't react to stimuli." He rolled the chair back, giving himself space. "Touch them," he ordered. Sarah froze. "What?" "My legs," Damian said. "Feel them. Tell me what gives me away." I can't," Sarah stammered. The intimacy of the request made her face heat up. "Do it," Damian growled. "This is not a request, Sarah. This is survival." Slowly, hesitantly, Sarah knelt in front of the wheelchair. She reached out with trembling hands. She placed her palms on his thighs, over the fabric of his suit trousers. They were rock hard, solid iron under the cloth. The heat from his body burned her palms. She slid her hands down to his knees, then his calves. The definition was undeniable. Any medical professional would know instantly that this man could walk. "Well?" Damian asked, his voice husky. He was watching her, his eyes tracking the movement of her hands. Sarah looked up at him from her knees. Their faces were close. The air between them crackled with a sudden, suffocating tension. This wasn't just medical anymore. It was something else. "You have too much tone," she whispered, her throat dry. "A paralyzed muscle is flaccid. Soft. Yours are tense." "I can't relax them," Damian said. "My body is wired to fight. You need to teach me how to let go." He leaned forward in the chair, his hand coming up to cup her face. His thumb brushed her bottom lip. "Teach me, Sarah," he whispered, "or we both lose everything." Sarah's heart pounded so hard she thought he could hear it. She was kneeling at the feet of a predator, her hands on his body, and for the first time, she wasn't just afraid. She was captivated. "Okay," she breathed. We start with the reflexes. But as she moved her hand to his knee, the study phone rang. Damian didn't answer it. He didn't look away from her. "Let it ring," he said. And in the silence of the room, with the phone ringing in the background, Sarah realized she was no longer just a prisoner in his house. She was falling into the center of his web, and she wasn't sure she wanted to climb out. Who is calling on the phone? Is it the assassin or the police? And can Sarah really teach a predator how to play dead without getting eaten? The tension is just getting started. If you want to see what happens in part 2, smash that like button right now. Let's get this video to 500 likes to unlock the next episode. Tell us in the comments, do you trust Damian? Or is he setting Sarah up to take the fall? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the moment secrets are revealed. This is Hot Tales by Mandara, where the stories only get hotter.